So what I want you to do is to make some files. You can divide pages, or you can have one page with each of these at the top. So Mahayana worship practices, Theravada worship practices, Mahayana teaching, its emphasis, and Theravada teaching emphasis. And we'll go into these in a little bit more depth than we have so far. So looking at worship in Theravada, Theravadas perform worship, or puja, which is a common word in India, taking part in Buddhist festivals and ceremonies. Vesak being the main festival, and Upasatha days, where you make offerings to the monks of food, and you go to the temple, the Vihara, and make offerings. One of the main practices. So holy days, Upasatha or Poya days in the year, are very important. You go to the temple, you show respect to the Buddha, and you make an offering to the monks. And so we support the work of the Vihara by doing that. You might go on a pilgrimage on one of these days, or on another time, to visit a relic of the Buddha, or something connected with the Buddha. There are lots of bits of the Buddha around, the tooth of the Buddha or something. Theravada Buddhists are careful not to worship Siddhartha Gautama as a great being, as they don't want to form attachment to him. So the Buddha is said to have dissuaded people who tried to worship and venerate him. However, the Buddha is respected in Theravada as the role model. He's revered, he's remembered, in order to develop gratitude and to think about the Buddha's teaching. And this is done in Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism, in images of the Buddha, which are treated with great respect. Flowers may be apparently offered, but this would only to reflect on Annika or in Theravada. Monasteries are a place for the Sangha to live. Theravada Buddhists may have a shrine of the Buddha in their home. They might visit temples to use the image of the Buddha as a focus for their meditation. But it's not being worshipped, it's being venerated for the purpose of developing understanding of the teaching and to become yourself as an individual, the kind of person who can be enlightened. In contrast, Mahayana acts of devotion play a much greater role in Mahayana Buddhism. The worship, and it probably is worship of bodhisattvas, is a way of gaining good merit, an act of punya, merit making, punya. For example, Avalokitesvara has unlimited merit to share with the world, his vast storehouse of merit, and worshipping him will give good merit for Mahayana Buddhists. Because the Buddha is still accessible in Parinibbana, he hasn't disappeared, you can still pray to him, placate him. If you worship the Buddha, this brings Buddhists into a personal relationship with him, much like in Protestant Christianity. Mahayana temples are generally more ornate and will have more images to worship, not just Siddhartha, but of Maitreya or the future Buddha and bodhisattvas. Acts of devotion include offerings to images, including food and milk, flowers, money, gold, jewels. And these are obviously for more than just thinking about Annika and practicing that till it becomes a truth you realize in a sort of religious experience that it's not logical, but to do punya, to merit make. Mahayana uses many kinds of worship aids. For example, the mantra, repeating a word or a phrase over and over is an act of meditation. Mantras have a profound spiritual effect on a person. The mantra can be supported by physical aids like prayer beads or wheels that Buddhists hold while they recite. A very well-known mantra is the mantra of Avalokitesvara, Om Mani Padme Hum. This is sometimes said to mean, behold the jewel of the lotus. So what I'd like you to do now is to think about this question here. from what you've learned so far, evaluate the view that worship is more important in Mahayana traditions than it is in Theravada Buddhism. And you could just make a list of arguments for and against. Or if you want to, you can have a go at an actual 30-mark essay on this, with a thesis, an argument for or against, a counter-argument for or against your viewpoint, and then some evaluation or a counter argument if you like. Now, you could then just do a conclusion and give your opinion, giving the strongest argument, or you might repeat that little cycle if you think it's needed. So, Theravada teachings, going on from practices and to talk about emphasis or teachings. The main emphasis of Theravada is the Dharma, the truth. And the word Dharma can mean truth, it can mean books and texts. Remember, Theravada at least follows the Nikaya Buddhist school, the Theravada Nikaya. It grew out of the collection, the Nikaya collection, that harks back to the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon, is a body of scriptures that records the teachings and practice of early Buddhism. It claims to be the Buddhavaccara, the word of the Buddha, but a lot of it just isn't. The three baskets, the three sections you remember are the discourses, the sermons of the Buddha, the suttas or sutras. Okay, well, that's fine, Mahayana would say to some extent. The Vinaya, these are the rules of discipline for the Sangha. And Mahayana, not so keen on that. Abhidhamma, the philosophical analysis, which includes commentaries on these texts, is something that early Mahayana rejected, very strongly, and developed their own Abhidhamma. And the goal is to become a worthy one. And so if you're turning the Theravada wheel of Dharma, that's this sort of stuff you're doing. So let's pause a second. Why is the Pali Canon an authority for Buddhists? What would you say if you were asked this question? What sort of points would you make to answer this? Why is the Pali Canon an authority for, in particular, Theravada Buddhists, and maybe less so Mahayana? Well, I put together an essay. I want to read it to you, and then you could maybe go back and answer this. Pali Canon is the Buddhist scripture, is used either fully or partially amongst all Buddhists. For Theravada Buddhists, the Pali Canon is the main source of authority, seen as the teachings of the Buddha. However, Mahayana Buddhists see other sutras as equally important. Heart Sutra, additions after the formation of different sects and establishing Mahayana Buddhism. Although they see the Pali Canon as the authentic word of the Buddha, the Buddhavaccara, for them it's merely the beginner's guide to Buddhism, something for those still ignorant within samsara. The Mahayana ultimate goal is the Bodhisattva path. The importance of the Pali Canon is as a whole for Buddhists can be seen in the fact that each aspect is integral to the Buddhist everyday lives. The Vinaya teaches practitioners about the correct way to behave. The sutras detail them to what kind of views to develop and what views to abandon. And the Abhidharma helps to clarify thinking on important aspects of Buddhist thought. As well as teachings on how to live, the scriptures contain prayer and meditational texts that Buddhists use for their spiritual development. Buddhist scripture therefore provides instructions for managing all aspects of life, both in terms of formally religious and the regular day-to-day level of experience. Therefore, it's important and can be gathered from everyday use. However, this can be refuted, as the laity may not keep copies of the vast collections of the Pali volumes, and may never have read the canon at length. Therefore, it's important and can be questioned as a useful tool in reaching enlightenment, and for Buddhists in general, particularly the laity. The Pali Canon is said to be of great importance to Buddhists, as it's the first authority, particularly for Theravada Buddhists, for monastic rulings. The Vinaya Pitaka contains the rules, the conduct, for the monastic Sangha and was the first basket to be recorded in the first council, recited by Upali. This was done because it was felt the monastic order must be laced before the teachings could be taught, because without the order, the teachings would be lost. The importance can be detailed within the Theravada, which details 227 rules for monastics, which detail offences and punishments. Without these rules, there would be no monastic order, and thus no preservation of the teachings. Therefore, the Pali Canon can be seen as being of great importance for Buddhists. On the other hand, the importance of the Pali Canon can be refuted due to the lack of importance of the Vinaya holds for the laity and Mahayana monks. The laity does not hold the Vinaya as extremely important, as they do not practice many of the monastic rules, practicing only 5 precepts. Equally, as mentioned previously, the Vinaya did enable the preservation of the teachings and also keeps monks in order, which ensures lineage for teachings and passing off the Dharma to the laity. The monks will teach out of a sense of duty, upheld to ensure charity from the laity. The Pali Canon is of great importance to all Buddhists because it contains the Sutta Pitaka, the authentic teachings of the Buddha, preserved and recited at the first council meeting by Ananda. These are the direct teachings of the Buddha, containing the ideas of the Four Noble Truths, 5 skandhas, dependent origination, and 3 fires. They are of high importance and are regarded as the Buddha Vakana. The Sutta Pitaka also contains teachings on the lives of the Buddha and his parinirvana. These teachings form the foundation of all Buddhist sects, whether Mahayana or Theravada, as all root teachings stem from this groundwork. Further, although the Vinaya can be seen of little importance to the laity must abide by the 5 precepts and should aim to follow the responsibilities of a householder as set by the Buddha in his talk to Singala, documented in the Dinga Nikaya Sutta Pitaka. These are important to Buddhists as they allow for the laity to achieve the higher rebirth in formulating good karma. Equally, the importance of the Pali Canon can be refuted by the importance of other scriptures held in Mahayana sectors of Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism places emphasis on the Kinjur sutras, the Sutta and Vinaya, and Tantras and Tenjur, both canonical sources for the first translated word of the Buddha, containing 98 volumes. The second is the continuation of the former, with an additional supplemental material, not authentic to the word of the Buddha, but a collection of stories and commentaries, not Buddhist in character, lots of astrology, but it's still contained. Tibetan Buddhists also hold the Tibetan Book of the Living and of Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche as important, as it details the stages of death and rebirth for the Buddhist, and ways in which to achieve higher rebirth with the help of the Bardo state. This is held with great importance, even though the Buddha himself left unanswered the question of post-death experience. Further, the Pure Land tradition, the Sukhavati Vinaya Sutra, which detail how to get to the Pure Land. The Pali Canon may not be seen as important for all Buddhists when analysing the Abhidhamma section. This is the most advanced Pitaka, which provides the philosophical explanations of the nature of reality and gives deeper meanings to the word of the Buddha. They contain psychological theories and explanations of spiritual levels of development a person must pass through on the path to enlightenment. The importance of these may undermine the fact that even the majority of Theravada practitioners, an extensive study would not be undertaken, as they are of little importance because they are not seen by some to be Buddha Vakana. They are not authentic word of the Buddha but derived from the Sutta, and they will be regarded as less important because of the fact that many people will choose to study these, only advanced educated monks. They could be argued to play little role in the monastic and laity life for practice of Dharma, as they are core philosophical teaching. To conclude, it can be argued the Pali Canon plays an intricate part of Buddhist lives, from the Four Noble Truths to the 5 precepts. This underlying root teaching, interwoven in all strands of Buddhism, shows its importance to all Buddhists as a foundation for developing teachings. It's the source of Buddhist teaching, authentic to the authentic word of the mouth, and detail all aspects of the Buddhist life. Although Mahayana Buddhists have developed their own further sutras, it can be seen that the Pali Canon is similarly important in addressing basic concepts and values that all Buddhists adhere to. It's prevalent within all sects, unlike Mahayana sutras, which have no importance within Theravada Buddhism. So if we had to ask you now to go back and do the previous slide, how would you do? Why is the Pali Canon important Buddhist? Could you now pause and fill out 5-6 points on that? Go. So is the Pali Canon important? Is it accurate? Well, you could argue yes it is, for example. It was orally transmitted by monks for centuries, and the content can be traced back to the Buddha himself. It contains certainly some of the oldest written episodes of the Buddha's life. The Vinaya Pitaka contains the Mahavashtu, which records lots of the biographical episodes and connects and presents them together, including, for example, the 4 sites of gaining enlightenment. Maybe we could argue it's not accurate. Pali Canon was written down 5 centuries after the death of the Buddha. It's impossible to know if the teachings were changed by oral tradition or if mistakes were made in the recording. It's difficult to accurately date the episodes mentioned in the Pali Canon because the dates of the Buddha's life remain unknown by scholars. This makes it historically inaccurate. Mahayana texts were written down before the Pali Canon was. It's claimed, at least. So who cares? The Buddha's teaching is the greatest authority. So the texts are certainly important, particularly the old ones that can be traced back to Gautama and influence the lives of the Buddhists today. However, the Buddha himself argued the biggest source of authority that followers have is whether they can see evidence and whether they think what he's saying in their lives. Buddhism should focus on personal experience, not the influence of outside authorities. Is the Pali Canon accurate? What do you think? Weigh it up. What's the most convincing opinion? You could now pause and you could write down your answer. Yes, the Pali Canon is accurate. No, it's not. It's certainly central and of vital importance to Theravada. Perhaps one focus teaching from Theravada that we could look back on that is central to Theravada emphasis is the difference between nirvana and pari-nirvana. So literally, nibbana or nirvana means extinction. Extinction of the 3 fires of greed, hatred and delusion. Remember, the 3rd noble truth is the cessation of desire. And once you've achieved it, there's no more bad karma. The Buddha was the first to achieve nirvana through meditation under the Bodhi tree. He progressed through the 4 jhanas and then realized the true nature of things. Pari-nibbana, after death. In contrast, this is an unknown state. This Theravadan teaching is that it's inaccessible. Mahayana believe that one in pari-nirvana is actually in a blissful, heavenly, permanent state, like the Pure Land heaven. Buddhists believe that by following the Arahat path, Theravada believe, they can achieve nirvana or nibbana. And nibbana means that people will not be reborn and have escaped samsara, in contrast to Mahayana. How do we describe nirvana? It's unknown, it's not understood state. Those in pari-nibbana are outside of samsara, so they're inaccessible. At least that's what Theravada say. Mahayana disagree. In the 80th dilemma of the Pali Canon, Nagasena cannot explain nirvana to King Milinda through the analogy. Nagasena says nothing is similar to nirvana, so it cannot be compared to anything. Nagasena says it's like one person being asked how much water in the ocean or how many creatures live in it. It's unknowable, it's out of our power. There are some qualities of nirvana that can be explained through simile. For example, nirvana has the cooling effect of water. It soothes the heat, the three fires. So it's described as being, if you're in nirvana, you're a cool one. Yay. So, what might we say about the strengths and weaknesses of this description of nirvana? Strengths, the similes that Nagasena uses, does help people understand some of the characteristics of nirvana, how it quenches thirst, Tana. But it's unclear that nirvana is actually like from the text. Strength, it reflects the truth of the Dharma. The Buddha would not teach something that was wrong. So for his followers, it's better than not explaining it. But in the questions raised by the 80th dilemma are not answered anywhere in the Dharma. A strength is this could be accompanied by biographical information about the Buddha's demeanour after he gained enlightenment to help people understand nirvana first. A weakness is Buddhists are aiming for something that they can never truly understand. A strength, the example of the ocean helps to highlight how complex nirvana is. And yet weakness is. So, in bringing it into land, the Theravada idea of the Sangha is very different. If you want to be enlightened, you have to be in the Sangha. The distinction between monks and laity. Monks are the full-timers. They are celibate. Their role is to follow the Vinaya, the discipline, and to instruct the laity. The lay people practice giving or dana, generosity, to the monks. This generates merit, puna. There's a clear hierarchy. In contrast, Mahayana emphasis is very different. Mahayana is the largest division of Buddhism, half the world's Buddhists. It focuses on the Buddha himself, celebrating him as a saviour. It opens the door to religious devotion and prayer. It offers salvation through the grace of an infinite Buddha. It recognises the salvific grace of all the Buddhas past and reveres Bodhisattvas. I think, in terms of the Mahayana emphasis, as an example, how would you answer this? How is anatta different from sunyata? Can you explain the Mahayana emphasis on anatta, how it's different from sunyata? See if you can write something down now. A key Mahayana emphasis is the Trikaya doctrine, that the universe has these three essences. The ultimate truth, Nirmanakaya, is that the Nirmanakaya is the truth that the historical Buddha was in the world. Parinibbana is the celebration of the Buddhas in heaven, and the Buddha himself getting to heaven in Parinibbana, and that there are many of these celestial bodhisattvas, heavenly Buddhas, lords of the Buddha land, like Amitabha. And Theravada aren't always impressed by this idea. Then there's the third idea, the ultimate truth is Dharmanakaya, the Buddha in eternity. This is the Buddha as an abstract idea or principle, the truth behind everything. Dharma, truth in Mahayana, the emphasis is in a way accepts renunciation is still important. It's not completely done away with, but it's mitigated. There are new scriptures, the perfection of wisdom literature, culminating perhaps in the Lotus Sutra and Heart Sutra, later in the Pure Land Sutras. Essential idea from the earliest of these Mahayana scriptures in compassion, rhetoric of compassion. The expanded concept of awakening, the Buddha nature in all of us, the emphasis on the Bodhisattva ideal. This diverse teachings depend on sect and tradition. Think Tibetan Buddhism. Tantric Buddhism emphasizes ritual. And the Buddha nature school, which developed the Buddha idea of Buddha nature. Important now, particularly in Zen Buddhism and across Mahayana Buddhism. The Mahayana Sangha generally follow a monk, the laity, the hierarchy, very diverse set of ideas about the Sangha. Zen, Pure Land, Nichiren all have priests more than monks. In many aspects of Japanese Buddhism, basically your funeral director is your priest, is your monk. Sects have radically different emphasis. In Japan, monks may marry and have family. Nuns, although subordinate, kind of families, unlike Theravada. Sects de-emphasize the monk-laity divide. In true Pure Land Buddhism, the monk is more like a priest who might be in charge of your local Pure Land temple, as it were. Lay groups have emerged. Soka Gakkai, and I notice Soka Gakkai is considered a bit of a cult or a sect from Japan. A bit dodgy. Bring it all into land. Summary points. Theravada and Mahayana tradition share many basic principles, practices, and institutional structures. Theravada is the more united, coherent tradition based on the conservation of early teachings. Mahayana is more diverse, inspired by new bodies of scriptures, new Buddhas, Bodhisattva cults. Mahayana Buddhism evolved in East Asia, giving rise to many new traditions. Theravada preserved in Southeast Asia. Mahayana presents itself as the higher path. Mahayana has an expanded concept of the Buddha, the Trikaya doctrine, distinctive teachings and texts. Think the various sutras, the Lotus Sutra, the Heart Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, Pure Land Sutras, and it has a more diverse Sangha with the lines blurred between a laity and the ordained. So some extension, with our eye in the exam, thinking about Mahayana in particular. If you're given a question on Mahayana emphasis, Mahayana doctrine, such as sunyata, it's a good idea to briefly mention Theravada ideas as the background they developed from and build up to the Mahayana doctrine. Remember, Mahayana Buddhists disagree with the foundation of Theravada Buddhism, but they take their doctrines further. So take this as an example. Assess how Mahayana teachings about sunyata relate to the doctrine of anatta. How would you answer that question? Well, you could sit down and plan this. You need to begin by explaining anatta in relation to anicca and the three universal truths, that there is no self, as everything's constantly changing. You need to introduce Mahayana Buddhism as a later development. The Lotus from the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha appeared after death and explained further doctrines, and sunyata is an extension of anicca, impermanence. Explain the idea the world is made of dharmas or truths or realities, and these are empty of inherent existence. They're hollow, they're empty. They're all made of parts, and the parts are made of parts. And at the fundamental level, they're constantly changing. In reality, nothing can permanently exist, not even the parts. And the two or three truth doctrine view of the levels of reality, we think we are existing because we exist within a conventional level of reality. Here we can discuss beings as existing, as having the five parts, the five skandhas. However, the ultimate truth is, essentially, this is untrue. True nature cannot be discussed as it does not exist. Remember, it's very complex. It can only be truly discussed after nirvana. How have you done? Have a go at that if you want, and think. Rate your answer. Was it easy? Was it hard? What do you think you need to do to improve?